Cowboys Nation, there is a phone call that needs to happen in Dallas right now. One phone call, and if Jerry Jones makes it, this franchise changes overnight. Myles Garrett just became available. Not rumor, not speculation. The Browns restructured his contract, lowered the trade cost, and opened the window. And the Cowboys are sitting on 2 first-round picks. Now, before I get into what this trade actually looks like, what it costs, why Cleveland moves him, and what he does to every offense in the NFC East, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop your take in the comments, because this one is going to split the room, and I want to hear where you stand. Let's get into it. So Myles Garrett is not a need. He is not a want. He is a necessity. And let me tell you exactly why this conversation is different from every other name that has been thrown around this offseason. When the Cowboys were chasing Max Crosby, the fan base was split. Some people were in, some people were hesitant, and I get it. Max is a great player, but here's the thing. Max Crosby and Myles Garrett are not in the same conversation. Max is silver, Myles is gold. That is not disrespect to Max, that is just the truth. There is a tier in this league that only one defensive player currently occupies, and his name is Myles Garrett. Look at the numbers, not the feelings. His numbers in 2018, 14 sacks. In 2019, 10 sacks. In 2020, 12 sacks. In 2021, 16 sacks. In 2022, 16 sacks. And then the league paid him. First defensive player ever to crack that $40 million range. You know what most players do when they get that kind of money? They relax, they coast, they go from elite to solid. Myles Garrett did the opposite. He ramped up. He set the all-time sack record. He showed up every single week. You can count on one hand the games he has missed in his entire career. That is not just talent. That is professionalism. That is the character. And that is exactly the kind of player you build a defense around. Now let us talk about the real conversation nobody wants to have directly, the age argument. I hear it everywhere. He is 30. He is going to decline. The window is closing. And I want to push back on that hard, because the history of this game does not support that argument. Reggie White was 36 years old and still putting up 16 sacks. Jerry Rice had over 1,200 receiving yards at 40 years old. Tom Brady dragged Tampa Bay to a Super Bowl when everyone said he was done. Age is not the enemy. Decline is. And Myles Garrett has shown zero decline, not a dip, not a hint. So until I see evidence that he is slipping, I am not entertaining that conversation. And here is the part that should terrify every offensive coordinator in the NFC East. Right now, the Cowboys already have Quinnen Williams. They already have Kenny Clark. They already have Rashan Gary. You put Myles Garrett on that line, and you do not just have a good defensive front. You have a problem that cannot be schemed away. You cannot double-team all of them. You cannot slide the protection to all of them. Something breaks every single play. Jalen Hurts sees that lineup, and he is thinking about running before the ball is even snapped. Jaden Daniels with those skinny legs looking at that front four, and his knees are already shaking. That is not football analysis. That is just math. And here is what people consistently undervalue. Myles Garrett does not just get sacks. He forces fumbles. He disrupts timing. He makes quarterbacks nervous 2 seconds before the snap. That nervousness forces bad decisions. Bad decisions become turnovers. Turnovers become points, and points win games. You bring Myles Garrett to Dallas, and the offense suddenly has more opportunities to score because the defense is taking the ball away. Dak Prescott might barely play the fourth quarter anymore because this team is blowing people out by halftime. We saw it in 2023. We can see it again.
Now let us talk about the actual cost, because this is where the fan base gets divided. 2 first-round picks, the 12th and the 20th, and I want to be honest with you, that is real value. Those are real picks. I am not going to sit here and pretend that is nothing. But let me ask you something. Out of 4 first-round picks over 2 years, how many do you realistically hit on? 2, maybe, if you were lucky. That is just the history of the draft. It is not a science. It is a gamble every single time. Myles Garrett is not a gamble. He is a guarantee. You know exactly what you are getting. You know exactly what he produces. So when you weigh a known elite commodity against 2 picks that might become good players in 3 years, the math is not that complicated. And think about the position Dallas is in right now. No other team in this league can put 2 first-round picks on the table the way the Cowboys can. That is leverage. That is purchasing power. Walk into that negotiation with confidence because Cleveland needs to move him. They need the cap space. They need the draft capital. And they are not winning a championship with him on their roster anyway. So it is a trade that makes sense for both sides. Dallas gets the best defensive player in football. Cleveland gets a reset. Everybody wins. But here's where it all falls apart, if it falls apart. Jerry Jones has to pick up the phone. And that sounds simple. It should be simple. But we have seen this before. Derrick Henry wanted to be a Cowboy. Everybody knew it. The price was reasonable. And the phone call never came. That cannot happen again. Not with this player. Not at this moment. The ego has to come second. The franchise has to come first. Jerry, I know you feel like teams should call you. I know you built something that commands respect. But this is not the time for posture. This is the time for action. Pick up the phone, make the deal. Worry about the pride later. Because here's what this move actually means beyond the X's and O's. It sends a message to every player in that locker room. It sends a message to every fan who has watched 30 years of heartbreak. It says we are serious, not kind of serious, not building towards serious, right now, today, this minute serious. And that energy changes everything. It changes how the team practices. It changes how they prepare. It changes what they believe is possible on a Sunday afternoon. Micah Parsons leaving hurt this team. I'm not going to pretend it did not. But sometimes a door closing is not the end of the story. Sometimes it is just the setup for something bigger. And I genuinely believe that Myles Garrett is that something bigger. The Cowboys have the picks. They have the cap room. They have the need. And the player has already shown in the past that he wants to be in Dallas. Everything is aligned. The football gods are setting this up. Tom Landry up there moving pieces around the board right now. So I'm asking you, Jerry, not as a critic, not as someone who has been frustrated for 3 decades, as a fan who believes this team is one real move away. Make the call. Get the deal done. Because if Myles Garrett ends up on an NFC East rival instead, we are going to have a very different and very painful conversation. Drop your take in the comments right now. Would you give up the 12th and the 20th for Myles Garrett? And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This is where the real Cowboys conversation happens.